Anyway, thank you for joining me today for what is the difference between a coach and a mentor. And I think this is an interesting topic because when I started to coach, I started my coaching career in July timeframe. Everybody's like, oh, you'll be a natural at coaching. You've been coaching people for 30 years. And the reality is when I went to the training in July, the first training in July, I was like, wow, this is not what I've done. And so I think people interchange the term coach and mentor with no malicious intent, but they are just very, very different. So I thought, even for my friends who are kind of curious about what I do as a coach, I thought this would be a good way to start. So I'm just going to get into a little bit about me. I'm a corporate America veteran for about 30 years. I worked in the advertising space, digital advertising space since I interned in college, and saw the change of the industry of advertising changed exponentially over those years. We were part of Monster.com in the heyday, and I've seen so many changes, and I've had multiple positions within an ad agency. I've run sales, I've run offices, I've run accounts, I've managed large teams, and really have had a very privileged career, and decided to retire in June now that my kids had graduated college, and I really wanted to do something that was just more aligned with my values of just helping people and using my experience. So I started coaching. I've done consulting for many, many years, but I learned how to started to coach in July, and I've been coaching ever since with IPAC is the training. I've also been certified in predictive index because I believe that assessments and workplace behaviors are super important when I work with corporate executives, how you show up for work, how teams can improve by understanding the work styles of others, and just very interested to bring that into my practice. I have a background in marketing, sales, software sales, account management, budgets. So there's really not much that I haven't done in my corporate career. And I'm a single mom of 2 amazing children who are flown and grown. I might have mentioned that earlier. So I want to just start diving into what is a coach. Broadly defined, a coach is defined as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional development. So that's like a lot of words. But a coach is hired for their expertise in a given area. They ask thought-provoking questions. I think this is a central difference between coaching and mentoring, and I'll get into that a little bit more. We believe as coaches that the client has the answers. The client leads the session. The sessions are very structured. We check in and say, is this what you want to talk about? What's your goal? How will you feel successful by the end of the session? Why is this important to you? And what do you think you need to resolve in order to achieve your goals? So we have some very standard questions that we ask as coaches to make sure that our clients get the most out of every session. The time frame is pretty, generally shorter, 3, 6 months, a year, as opposed to mentoring. And there's very structured meetings. I find that coaches are generally from outside an organization and mentors are from within, but I've mentored externally and internally. So I don't know that that's necessarily a rule of thumb. And then I'd say, what is a mentor? Broadly defined, I would say, is an experienced and trusted advisor. So at my old company, we would assign mentors for new employees. So I think it's a great onboarding tool to help employees on board and have key contacts within the company, likely outside of their department. And I think it makes the company smaller. I think they're generally take people under your wing as a mentor, generally more experienced. And I think companies also use mentors beyond onboarding. I think that companies use mentors to develop employees. More senior employee sees promise in another employee and they want to mentor them and show them the way, and they provide support and feedback to the individual. I think know that mentors are development driven. Where do you want to go next in the organization? And we're going to help you get there. The mentee is more likely to ask questions. So when I mentored through Women Unlimited, and Carol Agnot, highly recommend that you connect with her through mentoring Women Unlimited. People came to me for my expertise. I'm having an issue here. How do you suggest that I handle that? So much more advice driven as a mentor, whereas a coach the client has the answers. And of course, the benefit of my experience will come into it, but just a very different dynamic. I think when to use, you can use both. You can have a coach if you're a salesperson and you're having a problem with presentation skills, but you have a lot of promise. You may have a mentor that's helping develop you within the company. And you may have a coach that's just working on your sales presentation skills. So they are not mutually exclusive. You can use both, but they are very different functions. So I think companies use coaches to assist leaders in coping with changes, such as a merger. I think you can help individuals who are not meeting expectations. I do think there's a little bit of like, am I doing something wrong? So I think there could be some trust issues when hiring a coach at a corporate level, but generally I think it's a really nice benefit when a company hires a coach for you. A coach can prepare an individual for advancement in an organization, improve behavior in a short period of time. And I think at an executive level, it's preferable than group trainings. What both functions have in common is trust, confidentiality. Both are highly confidential. If you hire a coach at a company, or a company hires a coach for you, what happens in the session between a client and a coach is confidential. It can't be used in reviews. I can't release information back to the company, even though they're paying me. The coaching arrangement is between myself and the client. The company can ask the person I'm coaching for any information about the session, but I cannot. And I'm guided by ICF, which is the governing body. So, and mentors too. I mean, I don't think you'll establish a good trusting relationship when you're mentoring somebody if your information isn't confidential. So they both adhere to those practices. When you would use a mentor, I think, is to motivate talented professionals to focus on their career development. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but a solid retention and onboarding tool. I really think it helps in a large company to assign mentors for new employees. What I have seen is that the mentorship can drop off. There's not a lot of accountability. So I think just a little more juice in a mentor program at companies is something that I often see. It just wanes. I think when you're partnered with a more senior leader, it's you see what's possible when you have a mentor. Wow, like an SVP of sales is investing in time with me. So I think it's a really nice statement for a company, and I think it transfers knowledge to down through the organization, that there aren't keepers of information only at one level, and it broadens ties across the organization. It makes you feel smaller and less siloed. And then just consideration for both roles, I know I touched on this too, is you can use both roles. I mean, there's no one size fits all. The more people that help your key employees, the better. But again, I can't emphasize the trust, respects, and confidentiality unless, as a coach, that I've inspired you and you trust me. I'm not going to get a lot out of the session, and neither is the person that I'm coaching. So you just really, those have to be front and center. They have to feel connected to you. They have to feel like you trust and you have their best interests at heart. For coaching, and this is very specific to the type of coaching that I do, we have desired goals and outcomes. So I know for sure what my coaching engagement is about, whether it's about executive presence or presentation skills or job changes. I know what the desired outcome is. It does not mean that we don't hit some roadblocks or some other areas that we want to focus on during our coaching engagement, but it's very clear what the person I'm coaching wants to work on. Where I think with mentoring, it's grooming, it's time, it's a little less structured and a little less goal-centric. So I think that's a really key step, is understand what you want out of each relationship. And the reason I'm in coaching is because I want to pay it forward. People took a lot of interest and care for my career over the years, and I have tremendous mentors, clients, people that I work with internally, externally, and I say pay it forward. When you work for a boss or somebody who is not invested in your career, while you do learn from that person, you will learn a lot from people that you don't necessarily want to model their behavior. It's really, really a beautiful thing to see people just take care of other people and help them grow and develop in the most amazing ways. And for coaching, for me, I've seen my clients grow so much just because they're focused on their growth and they're introspective. And there's nothing wrong with taking time out for yourself to help develop your career. I think corporate executives and leaders are very, very busy and often overlook themselves. And then, and just how I've helped my clients, I've worked with clients through job transitions, promotions, interview prep, letters, communication, exits. How do I leave positively? How do I resign? How do I address a letter or an email to a senior executive or a C-level person? Just different communication styles that I think you need to have at an organization. You need to know when to use those. Leadership development is a big one. I think people can have skills and be super talented, but lack the leadership awareness. So one area that, and I'm a core energy coach, which is a whole nother topic of conversation, but leadership development is a lot about awareness. Like, how do you show up at work and how do other people see you? And when you can have that level of awareness, you can make radical changes, and not just overnight changes, but changes that last over time. So that is the key tenet, I think, of coaching, is that you want to make sustainable changes with a client. Executive presence seems to come up a lot. Just because you're a senior leader does not necessarily mean that you have executive presence, and just because that's something that I think a lot of people work on, and I don't want to be gender specific. I do see it a little bit more with my female clients. Managing work-life balance is always a big one, right? I mean, am I working hard enough, long enough? How do others view me? So we work a lot on that with coaching and maybe mentoring, but since my specialty is coaching, I would say that comes up a lot. Communication skills, a tremendous amount. Email communication, distributed workforces. Be careful what you put in an email. Read it to yourself before you send it. I mean, there's some basics there. And I put this bullet last because I think it really is something that I see literally every single solitary day in my life, navigating politics. I think it's just a fact of life when you work in a company. There are right and wrong ways to do that. It's an art and a science. There's no book that tells you exactly how to do it. You have to have a level of awareness to bring to the table. You have to understand what the landscape looks like. So I think navigating politics is one area that I think I'm particularly adept at. And really the other thing, I don't have much else to say about the topic. I think if I could just end my presentation with, you can use both roles. They both need trust. They both need confidentiality and respect. And they're both important to develop people. So not one role is better than the other. My specialty happens to be coaching, but I have mentored all my life. I have not coached all my life. And what I love most about coaching is giving my clients the space to grow. So as a mentor, I may be filling the silence. In coaching, I'm comfortable with the silence, because that is when I know that my clients are actively working on their topics and they're looking within. And so while I can help guide, although in coaching we're not supposed to lead, and we tend not to, silence is when change happens, when you are quiet with yourself. And again, that was not a strong suit of mine. I mean, I thought I had it all locked down, that I could coach no problem, but that was probably my biggest sticking point. Is this isn't about me, the coaching session, in my experience, it is about you and your growth. So I love coaching. It is probably the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. And that was really my quick presentation for today. Today's my first Facebook Live with people actually here. I cannot believe how many people are actually here. I love coaching. I would love to talk to any of you more about it. I take feedback very seriously, so please feedback away. And I did put together a quick deck, so if anybody wants that, you can contact me just on Facebook or cell or email DStar Consultants. And I really enjoyed this time with you. And again, I'll put the video up, but coaching is amazing and mentorship is amazing. And just remember to pay it forward and treat your coworkers and people that are around you with respect. And you get a lot out of that. So enjoy your day. Thank you for spending this time with me.